So what we're looking at today, I'm sure the suspense is killing you. So these are the shock towers that came out of the T-5, the Auto. They're not terrible. They've been apart a few years ago and had new top caps and bits and pieces, but they're looking a little bit crusty. So we had a breaker in a couple of months ago that had some relatively new kit on it, and we've added some new protective boots and a bump stop, new top mounts and spring caps to these, and giving them a bit of a clean. So that's the first one done. Now I'm about to do the second one, so let's watch it. So now you get to see me struggle with the dreaded spring compressors. Winding them down always puts me on edge. Maybe it's an irrational fear, or maybe it's tens of kilonewtons of potential kinetic energy just waiting to rip my face off. Who knows? As you can see, the strut is now nicely stripped down. Springs off, all the top cap removed. I'm just going to give it a quick clean, get rid of all the muck and the dirt on here before we put it all back together with some new bits. If you've ever wondered how to strip down a suspension strut for a Volvo 850, it's a bit more complicated than your usual item. So first of all, you remove this nut here, which is a 22, I think, which releases this keeper plate here. It's like a rubber-coated metal. That releases your top mount, this bearing here that allows the strut to move with the steering. Then you've got this strange little nut here, which keeps the spring in place. So you don't remove that yet. First of all, you compress the spring, which releases the spring from this, which is a top cap, which is like a little bush there that holds it to the damper. Once the spring's compressed, this becomes relatively free and easy to move. If it's difficult to shift, you can actually knock it like a wheel center on and off, or you can put an 11mm spanner across these flat bits and you can lever it off that way. That then releases the gaiter and bump stop, which is this here, as you can see, is in not very great condition. And there's a little metal plate that sits on top of that. So we're going to basically replace all of this, apart from the nut which stays with it and the top cap and nut here. So we have, voila, one new gaiter and bump stop. Of one of the other suspension struts, we took that plate off and just gave it a scrub and a quick lick of paint to stop that rusting too much more. Yeah, new spring cap and a new set of bearings. These aren't terrible, but while I've got it apart, I might as well replace them for the sake of a few quid. Right, let's get it back together. Spring cap back on, nut secured because compressed spring, and then it's on to gingerly undoing those spring compressors. Then it's just the steering top mount, the keeper plate and the 22mm bolt to go on. The eagle-eyed viewer will have noticed that the strut looks quite a bit shinier than it did before. Once I cleaned the rust up, I didn't really want to just put it back like that, so a bit of Kurust, a bit of paint just to smarten the part up because, well, why not? Right, brake calipers, standard fare. While we're on the bench and off the car, we'll give them a quick clean, tart them up a bit. Nothing really wrong with them, the seals all look good, but might as well take the opportunity to smarten them up before putting everything back together. So I'll quickly mention the breaker we talked about earlier. This was actually a green Volvo T5 that we found as a scrappage scheme banner on the forecourt of a Vauxhall dealership. So obviously we had to save it. And it turned out somebody had spent quite a lot of money on that car before trading it in for a, I don't know, nasty mocker or something. So we liberally used it for parts, most of which are going on this car. So standard, the Volvo 850 and the T5 came with a 280mm rotor. The brakes on here though are slightly modified 302 from the latest C70. So the caliper itself is actually exactly the same, it's the carrier that's different. So the brakes can be interchanged quite easily, but the carrier is the all-important bit. So you're going to see me clean that up in great detail and get that painted, because that's actually the most valuable bit of the braking system. Made some progress on cleaning the calipers, so I've taken off all the loose rust and dirt, treated it with a bit of Kurust to stop it corroding again before painting. Neat little trick, if you want to clean up the calipers ready to paint them, but you don't want to strip them all the way down, a cut some nice little bits of cardboard that fit in between the seal and the rest of the caliper, which means you can quite happily get in there with a brush, clean off all the rubbish, paint it with the Kurust or the actual paint, as it were, without having to take the seals out, without damaging them. Keeps them nice and clean and fresh, because you don't want to damage those. Keeps all the dust out of the caliper itself. So next job for these is a lick of paint, let them dry and clean off the working surfaces again, and then it's ready to rebuild. It's like watching paint dry, this, isn't it? Oh wait, maybe it is. So here's the strut you saw me rebuild earlier, and we've also got some rear suspension bits and pieces, which we'll get onto at some point in the future. However, I may have got a bit carried away buying car parts because, well, buying car parts. First of all, we've got some nice new track rod ends because somebody took an angle grinder to the old one. Yes. We also have some new lower arms. We've got new discs. We've cleaned and refurbished the hubs. You'll also notice the plates that hold the subframe on were disgusting, so I cleaned and painted a pair of those. We've got a lovely little gift from the Volvo wizard. We've got a T-5R manual gear knob. This is very nice. We've also got some drop links and some new brake lines to go with the brake calipers that we've just been rebuilding. We do also have some anti-roll bar bushers, but that's a very different story. So, as you can see, the calipers and all the bits that go with it are now cleaned and painted. So we made an effort to not paint over the working surfaces so we don't interfere with how it connects to the car. Also cleaned up all the sliders, so it should work nicely. We've also got new pins, or cleaned pins I should say, and we've cleaned the rubbers up, ready to put the whole thing back together. We should be reassembling it with some red rubber grease, so we've got some Miller's Oil red rubber grease there. Which is much better than standard grease. If you put standard grease in these little fellas here, they tend to perish over time. So the next job is to put it all back together. Okay, so calipers are back together. The spring clips down here will go on once the pads go back in, which we shall do just before it goes on the car. So, that was easy. So, here we have the clutch master from the T-5. This is from the donor car. Unfortunately, you can see the boot got slightly damaged when we took it out. So, as we've got the chance, I thought it'd be a good opportunity to rebuild it. I ordered a boot kit, but it also comes with all the other seals. So, let's get it apart. Replace all the seals, at least then it's good to go. I'm also going to take the gasket off the old blanking plate from the Auto, which is this here. Scrape off the remnants of this, so we got a nice seal when it goes back in. Keep the car nice and dry inside. Okay, that's the master cylinder put back together. Time to get it fitted. And that right there is the clutch master connected to the clutch pedal. That's it, we're done under the dashboard. No more contortionist acts. So first job is to remove the brake master cylinder because the reservoir for the brake master feeds the clutch. So we've got to get that out, swap the reservoir over to one that has got a feed for the clutch, and then try and install all the hydraulic lines back on. Turns out the clutch master line we've got was slightly deformed, which was part of the problem. So when we got a fresh line off another breaker, it was nice and easy in the end. So that's the brake master in. That's this fella here. And this is the new hose. So we have to have a bottle, a reservoir that's got an adapter on for this. This then feeds under gravity to the clutch master down here, which is now plumbed in. And that clutch pipe runs all the way across the bulkhead at the back, all the way down around here and into the slave, which is just there. And also, while we've been at it, we now have selectable gears. Thank you for watching. Join us next time for roll bars and rebuilds. If you enjoyed the video, do please like, share and subscribe. You can also now follow us on all the usual social media things.